On the stage of history, where epic dramas unfold, acts of heroism and villainy intertwine, shaping the destiny of humanity. And amid this complex tapestry of events and characters, the enigmatic figure of Judas Iscariot emerges, the apostle who betrayed Jesus, marking his name with the stigma of betrayal. His name, Judas, echoes through the centuries, carrying the weight of guilt, the shadow of doubt, and the enigma of his motivations. In this video, we will unravel the mysteries surrounding this controversial figure, exploring his trajectory, the nuances of his actions, and the different theological, historical, and psychological perspectives on his betrayal, guilt, and possible redemption.
Before he became synonymous with betrayal, who was Judas Iscariot?
The biblical sources, especially the canonical Gospels, offer few glimpses into his early life. We know that he was the son of Simon Iscariot, and the epithet Iscariot may indicate his geographical origin, perhaps from the city of Caria, but its exact meaning remains a mystery.
Imagine Palestine in the 1st century, under the yoke of the Roman Empire.
An oppressed people, thirsting for liberation, placed their hopes in a Messiah. In the midst of this cauldron of longings and expectations, Jesus of Nazareth appears, a charismatic preacher who captivates crowds with his message of love, compassion, and hope. And Judas, attracted by the light of the promise of a new world, decides to follow Jesus. But what were Judas' aspirations? Some scholars speculate that he, perhaps imbued with nationalist fervor, was a zealot, a member of a radical group that sought the liberation of Israel through force. However, this hypothesis lacks conclusive evidence and remains in the realm of conjecture. Judas, chosen by Jesus as one of the 12 apostles, enjoyed a privileged position, forming part of the Master's inner circle. This choice suggests that he initially demonstrated qualities that made him trustworthy. John, in his Gospel, reveals that Judas was responsible for the group's finances, which demonstrates the importance of his role within the apostolic community.
Imagine Judas, the guardian of the treasury, looking after the community's resources, a position that required responsibility, organization, and above all, honesty.
This role suggests administrative skills and a practical sense, contrasting with the more spiritual nature of the other disciples.
However, beneath the surface of apparent harmony, Judas' relationship with Jesus and the other apostles seems to have been marked by tension and conflict.
The Gospel of John reports that some of the disciples were suspicious of Judas, and the Gospel of Judas, in turn, portrays the other apostles as incapable of understanding Jesus' true message. Imagine Judas' internal conflict, the struggle between faith and reason, the search for a liberating Messiah, and the disappointment with Jesus' spiritual message. The narrative of Judas' betrayal, present in all four canonical Gospels, reaches its climax at the Last Supper, a moment full of symbolism and omens. It is in this solemn context that Jesus reveals that he will be betrayed by one of his own.
Apprehension and anguish take hold of the apostles.
Who among them would be capable of such a betrayal? Imagine the scene, the upper room, the room where Jesus and his disciples gather to celebrate Passover, the Paschal Lamb, the bread, the wine,
and in the air, the shadow of betrayal, the omen of tragedy after the supper. Judas, guided by an obscure purpose, leads Roman soldiers and authorities to the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus was praying.
There, under the cover of night, the betrayal is consummated with a symbolic act that perverts the meaning of the kiss, transforming it into an instrument of betrayal and violence. Judas' kiss, a gesture of apparent affection, serves as a sign to identify Jesus to his captors.
A kiss, a universal symbol of love and affection, desecrated by betrayal, forever marks the figure of Judas.
The motivations behind Judas' betrayal remain an enigma, challenging scholars over the centuries. The biblical sources, although presenting different perspectives, do not offer a definitive answer, leaving room for multiple interpretations. Greed. Matthew, in his Gospel, suggests that greed, materialized in the 30 pieces of silver, was the driving force behind Judas' betrayal. This interpretation portrays Judas as an ambitious man, seduced by money, willing to sacrifice his master for profit. Political disillusionment. Some scholars argue that Judas, perhaps a zealot, became disillusioned with Jesus' refusal to lead a revolt against Rome. Frustration over the absence of a political Messiah led him to betrayal, fulfillment of prophecy. The traditional theological interpretation, based on the reading of the canonical Gospels, considers Judas' betrayal as part of the divine plan for the salvation of humanity. Judas, an instrument of destiny, fulfilled the prophecies, paving the way for the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. The evil influence, Luke, in his Gospel, introduces the figure of Satan, who would have entered Judas and instigated him to betrayal. This perspective attributes to Judas a more passive role, dominated by external forces. The High Understanding, the Gospel of Judas, presents a radically different interpretation. In it, betrayal is an act of obedience to a request from Jesus himself, a necessary sacrifice for the liberation of the divine spirit. Judas would be the chosen disciple, the only one capable of understanding the true nature of Jesus' mission. After the betrayal was committed, the Gospels describe Judas as overcome by remorse and despair. In Matthew, he tries to return the 30 pieces of silver to the priests, recognizing the magnitude of his act. "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood," Judas exclaims, expressing his anguish and regret. Unable to bear the weight of his guilt, Judas takes his own life. Suicide, an extreme act of desperation, raises questions about the possibility of forgiveness and redemption, even for the one who betrayed Jesus. The legacy of Judas. His figure becomes an archetype, a symbol of human frailty, the capacity for error and betrayal. But the story of Judas invites us to go beyond simplistic condemnations. It leads us to reflect on the complexity of human nature, on the internal struggles, doubts and pressures that can lead us to make wrong decisions. The story of Judas, although marked by betrayal, remorse and tragedy, inspires us to seek redemption, compassion and forgiveness. It teaches us that, even in the midst of darkness, the light of hope can guide us back to the path of truth and love. Judas, the apostle who chose the path of shadow, leaves us a legacy of reflections on the importance of loyalty, compassion, and the search for truth. His story, a constant echo through the centuries, invites us to confront our own weaknesses and seek the light, even in the face of temptations and doubts that permeate the human journey. Birth and early life. Scarce information, only identified as the son of Simon Iscariot. Encounter with Jesus and call to the apostolate. Judas joins the group of Jesus' disciples and is chosen as one of the 12 apostles, responsibility for finances. John mentions that Judas was responsible for the group's finances, tensions and conflicts. The Gospel of Judas portrays conflicts between Judas and the other apostles, who did not understand Jesus' message. The Last Supper. Jesus announces that he will be betrayed by one of his own. The betrayal in the Garden of Gethsemane. Judas leads soldiers and Roman authorities to Jesus, identifying him with a kiss, remorse and suicide. Judas, overcome with remorse, tries to return the silver coins and takes his own life. Theological viewpoints. Traditionally, Judas is seen as the archetypal traitor, a symbol of sin and condemnation. However, modern theologians seek to contextualize his actions within the divine plan of salvation. Psychological. Judas can be analyzed as a complex individual, with possible mental disorders or internal conflicts that led him to betrayal. Historical. The context of Roman domination, messianic expectations, and internal conflicts among the Jews may have influenced Judas' actions. Villain viewpoints. The traditional view portrays Judas as a traitor driven by greed and evil. Tragic hero. A more in-depth analysis suggests that Judas, a victim of his own ambitions and external forces, becomes a tragic character. Indispensable figure. The perspective of the Gospel of Judas and some modern theological currents present him as an instrument of the divine plan, fulfilling a crucial role in the history of salvation. The story of Judas continues to provoke reflections on themes such as guilt, forgiveness, and redemption in contemporary Christianity. The possibility of divine forgiveness for Judas, even after his betrayal, raises questions about the nature of divine mercy and justice. Judas, regardless of the interpretation adopted, serves as a mirror of humanity, reflecting human fragility, the capacity for good and evil, and the search for meaning in a complex world. His story invites us to reflect on our own choices, the need for forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption, even in the face of the mistakes and failures that mark our journey.